Well, I turned 40 a couple months back. Guess I'm kind of an old now, huh? By today's standards, and back in my day, within my lifetime, you could find a house on a couple acres, maybe a 2-story house with a barn, around maybe $25,000, give or take. When I was a little kid, you could at least rent an apartment for, say, $50 a month. When I was 20, you could rent this apartment for $100 a month that I'm now paying $900 for. Early 20s, yeah. In my day, you didn't have to carry around a fucking cell phone all the time, everywhere with you. And people actually talked on the phone, so it was a lot easier to get a hold of somebody, even though you didn't have a phone in your pocket all the time. You didn't have to remember 500 different passwords and usernames for accounts for every single store in existence. You didn't have to spend hours signing up for accounts just to get a discount or to use a coupon at a fucking store. It wasn't that long ago. They had straws that actually held up for quite some time because they were made out of plastic. Had bags that you could carry your groceries inside without the bag ripping and spilling your groceries all over the ground, because they were also made out of plastic. And they were free. Free to all. When you went to a grocery store, there weren't so many people around, and the checkout lines, most of them were open. There were more employees working at the store, so everything worked much smoother and faster. There wasn't so much overcrowding everywhere, so you could walk through the store and shop, and the aisles were almost twice as wide. The parking lot had lots of space to get around. There were always plenty of spaces to park everywhere. But there were also 2 or 3 times as many ways in or out of any parking lot that nowadays have been closed off. The roads didn't have all these stupid, useless obstacles, freaking islands in them to screw up your car when you were getting around town. The street lights and turn lights and things like that actually functioned correctly and were timed correctly. The computers didn't have as much storage space and they weren't as fast, but the software worked better than anything we have now. The internet was better, much more free, even though the connection was slower. There was more truth on there and more interesting stuff on there. You could actually meet women or meet friends online very quickly and easily with local chat rooms in every town. Numerous ones that you could freely chat with people and start conversations and very quickly switch over to talking on the telephone. You could just start up a conversation with a random person in a public space without anybody getting weirded out. And people actually knew how to talk to each other. Everyone had social skills, and it was easy to make friends. if there was a carnival or something, you could go there alone and meet a couple, one or two random people and just be fast friends and go ride the rides together and have fun together at the carnival. And it wasn't all weird and stuff. Meeting a girlfriend was super easy. Everyone was pretty much nicer. People didn't have to lock their doors. Little kids could walk around or ride their bikes miles down the road and be safe. A person could park their car out front of a convenience store with the keys in the ignition and the doors unlocked and a shotgun in the gun rack and walk in the store and bullshit with the guy behind the counter as long as they wanted and come back out to their car and nobody stole anything. We didn't need bike locks to lock up the bikes because no one was going to steal them. We didn't need, 50 or 100 police cars in the big police station the size of freaking LAPD or Chicago PD for our little one-horse town. We had about 2 or 3 fucking patrol cars, maybe 5 or 6 officers patrolling the entire fucking county. And there was hardly any fucking crime. There weren't people strung out on drugs everywhere. But people could party, and some did, but it wasn't such a big fucking issue. The penalties for things like drinking and just whatever, were so much less steep that people's lives weren't ruined by little small infractions. The police, well, it used to say to serve and protect on the side of their cars. And when I was younger, that was at least partially true. Yeah. There never used to be school shootings. There were payphones on every corner in front of every store. You could walk in to a convenience store or grocery store or wherever and just say, hey, can I use your phone real quick? Most of them would let you use it. All the bathrooms and, public spaces were, everywhere and at all the convenience stores, restaurants, stores of all kinds. And they were all open to the public and they didn't need to have passwords on them and locks on them. Microwaves everywhere, including grocery stores, and you could pretty much just walk up and use them for the most part. There were arcade machines everywhere you go where you could pump quarters in and play video games. There were drive-in movie theaters that you could go to every weekend and hang out with your friends and sit and watch movies and hang out in the dark with a bunch of people in person. You could fucking go up and there'd be people hanging out up front by the screen throwing footballs around, and you could make friends with total strangers and meet girls and stuff there. There were miniature golf places that people would go and hang out, and places where people would go and park. You could fill up your shopping cart for about 20 or 30 bucks. Pack of cigarettes was about $1.25. See, I'm not that old, and I didn't start drinking until I was in for the most part, my early 20s. Maybe a little my teenage years, but you could get a 6-pack of beer for about $2 and change. Tall cans. You could. I remember, like, before I drank, going in grocery stores, and I would see the prices on stuff. I looked at stuff. I remember seeing tall cans on sale for 50 cents, like 24 ounce, 25 ounce cans. Hell, even in my late 20s, there were like bottles of wine for $2, $3, 6-packs for like $2.99 to $3.99. Tall cans for about $1. You had a variety. You didn't have to just pick some garbage like fucking 211 or Hurricane. You know, you could get like a Bush or a Pabst or, or other various, maybe Miller or something. Or you get like a 32-ounce Miller, like $1.25. There's like fucking. Not that that's great or anything. The light bulbs. You had incandescent light bulbs that gave off a much more natural light. Things felt different. There was a different energy. There weren't so many frequencies around in the air, so everyone was more clear-headed and more conscious and more caring. And most people were generally healthier and more energetic. We weren't being poisoned by our food and by the radiation in the airwaves so much. People weren't brainwashed so much by the high definition television and the frequencies being pumped out and drugs. There weren't so many people on so many fucking prescription meds. There weren't so many, crazy psych patients walking around out on the streets. It was rare to see a homeless person because people could afford to live. Jobs were abundant and the rent was cheap and mortgages were cheap and so on and so forth. Homes were cheap, Everything was way cheaper. There were 2 genders. 2. Of course, there were gay people, but they didn't make a big freaking stank and a religion out of it. They didn't have to wave their dicks in children's faces back then to get attention. Maybe they just had an earring or, they could just tell with their gaydar or whatever. I don't know, whatever, It didn't have to go around, with a flashing neon sign that said they were gay. It wasn't like some kind of trendy fucking thing. It just, because they were real instead of just being brainwashed and fucking bullied into it by the school system and the fucking propaganda. And because, I suppose one of the factors leading to that whole thing is just the fact that, like, the internet, the way it's become nowadays with the cell phones and the new social media and all the dating apps and stuff, set to give women like a million times more attention than they used to get, and to stop men from getting hardly any. So you've got this situation where, a woman who's like a 3 or 4 goes on a dating app or on a social media network, and she's got 500 or 1,000 guys telling her how beautiful she is, and a guy goes on there, it's like a 6 or a 7, and be on there for months without getting a single message from anyone but cam whores. Yeah, right? There's more freedom everywhere you went. Freedom to smoke, freedom to drink, shoot off fireworks. People had fun. They didn't get screwed with so much. We did just fine with probably less than 1/1000th of the cops we have out on the street now. Probably less than 1/10,000th of the ones that are out now are out, and that was just fine. People could leave their doors unlocked. For the most part, yeah. The sort of shit I see everywhere I go every day now. If I saw just one person like the type I see everywhere now, back then, me or anyone I knew would have seen one of those people. It would have been as strange as seeing a Martian standing there, you know? Or freaking Bigfoot or something. Bigfoot riding a unicorn, you know? Who waved our flags and shot off fireworks and sang "I'm proud to be an American" and the Star Spangled Banner on 4th of July. And we meant it because we still had real hope for America's future. The people would have never put up with the kind of garbage that we have going on now back then. Not in a million years. There would have been people, being rode out on a rail, tarred and feathered, and, there would have been an uprising or uproar. Well, it would have been a lot more likely back then if things were even half or 1/4 as bad as they are now. I believe a lot more people would have been speaking up and doing something about it. We had more pride in our people and our country. We had good reason to. There used to be ashtrays and garbage cans within close distance to everywhere you parked or walked down the street. And there wasn't piles of garbage piled up anywhere because the government actually, the cities, the counties, and the government actually cleared out the underbrush and, trenches to keep fires contained, and so we didn't have big forest fires. And the cities cleaned up the garbage, so we didn't have trash all over the fucking streets. And there were more garbage cans everywhere, so people had places to put the trash and to put their cigarette butts, so there wasn't garbage and cigarette butts all over the fucking place. There weren't piles of human excrement on the street because people were actually had places to go to the bathroom. And for the most part, people had places to live too, because they could afford to with a minimal effort. Most families were more tight knit, close to each other. They had get togethers on the holidays, hooped and hollered and had fun. Ones that were far apart talked to each other on the phone and exchanged cards and gifts on the holidays. Even extended families. You talk to your aunts and uncles, grandma and grandpa, cousins on the phone and hang out together. Yeah. There was a lot more of that back then. But a lot of people's families have broken apart and gone their own ways, and people don't talk anymore. People are more nasty, mean to each other, more hateful and spiteful, less forgiving, less caring than they used to be, less friendly in general everywhere. I'm sure there was violence, but most of the time there was more honor in it. People stood up for what was wrong, stood up for themselves for the most part, and they fought for what they believed in. Sometimes there were assholes, and sometimes there were goons and criminals, but you're allowed to protect yourself more from them. And there weren't as many pussies that needed to gang up on people 5-1, 10-1, and beat people or reach for a gun right away. They'd fight with their fists, stand toe to toe like men, one on one, and take it to the blacktop or take it out to the grass or whatever if they had a brain. And they didn't hold on, and for the most people didn't hold on to a grudge with so much hate in their heart as they do now. You get in a fight and whoever won, then you'd shake hands and move on with your life. You know? Went to a restaurant to order food, they'd have it ready within minutes, if not seconds, instead of having to wait around for 20 or 30 minutes for your food. The restaurants, the streets, everything was cleaner. Hmm. You could take care of paying bills or getting an apartment or whatever business you had to conduct didn't take 1/10 as long as it does now. Maybe not even 1/100th as long as it does now. You could pay a bill through the mail or pay it over the phone, get a hold of an actual person on the phone very quickly that could speak clear English, and you'd handle your business very quickly and it would be over with instead of having to play phone tag for an hour with people that don't even speak your language or know what's going on. We didn't have trains derailing and planes crashing every week and ships running into fucking bridges and mills and farms burning to the ground. We didn't dump out our fucking food supplies onto the ground and plow over our farm fields, kill all the freaking farm animals. Right? Had better music, better TV shows, and better movies. Better art and architecture. Better maintenance of the roadways and everything else. Better maintenance of the forest to prevent forest fires. Better garbage pickup. Better road maintenance. Better maintenance and cleaning of everything. And lower taxes. With more fucking services available. It was easy to get into a place. If you had the money, which wouldn't take that much back then. It wouldn't take as long. There wasn't so much red tape and so much bullshit to deal with. You dealt with human beings instead of with cold, uncaring fucking rental agencies managing everything. You dealt with the owners. You'd call them up on the phone and come down, meet them, take a look at the place. If they agreed to rent it to you, you'd pull money out of your wallet, hand it to them. They'd hand you the freaking keys and you'd move in. And you pretty much had your pick of other places, if you wanted to move. Remember when I could fill up my gas tank for $15 and drive to another state to go meet up with a girl? Cheaper everything, cheaper concert tickets, cheaper entrance to theaters, cheaper carnivals and parades, way more social events that are actually fun, free concerts in the park with plenty of places to park your car. Without nearly as many RoboCops walking around looking to smash heads for every little thing. You might not have had a couple hundred friends on Facebook, but you had some friends in real life they actually spent time and hung out with that actually be there for you when you needed them. You'd talk to them for hours on the phone. Or hang out in person and play video games, or, go hang out in the park or go down to the river, whatever, right? Go to the movies. Watching movies at home, there was something a lot more special about it. Same with video games. You wanted around, you'd go out and it'd be this whole special thing. If you were with your family or friends or whatever, you'd go out and you'd pick up a pizza or something, get some popcorn, get some soda or whatever. You go pick out few movies or some video games, and you'd rent them, and you'd go home and sit around with family and friends and watch movies together and talk and laugh together. You'd sit up till 1 o'clock in the morning with your family, waiting for that ball to reach the top and the fireworks to go on at Times Square. And everybody was, nobody was holding a cell phone in their hand. Everybody laughed and cheered and partied and had fun together. And they were truly hopeful for a better future, because it really looked like that's what was going to happen. It really looked like a thing that was possible, even likely. If I was to show the political debates for the Democrat or Republican Party, the same for Canada too, I'm sure, from even as far back as 10 years ago, maybe even 15 years ago, if you were to go back to the 90s and show that to people, they would think it was a scene from a science fiction horror film and never believe that it was real. Or maybe some Saturday Night Live skit. Most people could afford a place to live, whether they owned a house or rented a house or apartment. There was plenty of room and it was affordable. They had enough money left over to go take trips to different states, to go camping and go to fairs and carnivals and amusement parks. And they had people to go together with them, and everybody could afford to do so for the most part, most people. Just your average people. Some of those people today sleeping under tarps in the park, under bridges, or in the back of their cars in the grocery store parking lot. Nobody seems to notice, and people just step over them. Nobody seems to care. It's crazy. Everything's just gone crazy. The world we're in now. And it happens so fast. They used to actually kind of teach us stuff in school. I mean, it was the screwed up Prussian model, but at least they actually taught us something. Kids today, I mean, they don't even hardly learn math or how to read and write and spell nowadays in school. I could read and do basic math my first day of freaking preschool. Because my parents taught me with flashcards. Most other kids could read and write and do basic math by like first grade or something at least. Better than most kids in fucking 6th and 7th grade and shit now. Kids knew some other things too. Is in Kindergarten Cop. A little boy comes out and says, "Boys have a penis, girls have a vagina." Huh. The things kids will say, huh? A rainbow used to be this thing where, well, it was pretty, like a kaleidoscope of light that was kind of a symbol of God's promise. And more commonly, it was thought when you look at a rainbow, you were thinking about the leprechaun with a pot of gold at the end. But there weren't flags everywhere and sidewalks and staircases painted with them. It was just a bunch of pretty colors. Go back a little further in time, probably my early childhood, and gay meant happy. And even the N word, that's misunderstood, actually. Now, people might hate me for bringing this up, but I don't hear anybody mentioning this because it doesn't seem like people even understand how it got taken out of context and where it comes from. So I'll freaking say it. And if it pisses you off, well, too bad, I guess. I mean, I'm just telling you from what I've seen, from being around like elderly Southern people, and because I've I've looked through old dictionaries, so I know that Southerners have a Southern drawl, and the dictionary used to describe people as having come, dark-skinned people as having come from Nigeria. That's the way the dictionary used to describe it. So it said Niger, and people with Southern accent talk like this. So Niger became Niger. That's how it. I swear to God. But now it's just this. I mean, by the time that was before my time, though. I mean, it had already been turned into this big, hate thing by the time I was around. But before my time, I'm just saying I was young enough to where, like, I looked through dictionaries to figure out what things meant, and hung out with enough elderly people and stuff that I thought, well, that doesn't seem right. And then I'm like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? Like, they didn't mean it. They didn't even mean anything by it. They just thought that they were just trying to use a word that they learned from the dictionary that they thought was the correct term they were taught in school. And they had a southern slang, a southern accent that made it sound that way. I don't know. There may have been some hateful bastards. I'm sure there. I know there were. I know there were hateful bastards that used the term totally wrong in a hateful way, and that there were people that were abusive and hateful towards people that were different. I'm not gonna say that wasn't a case, but it wasn't that. It wasn't really all that prevalent. People weren't so bothered by things until they were shoved in their faces and bullied and pushed on them, you know? And then they got mad because they were getting bullied and forced into kowtowing and saying they believe in something or they agree with something they don't agree with, and they didn't like being pushed around, so they got mad. They acted out, which is not to say there weren't other types of people that were just straight up assholes, but that wasn't a majority case. That was just a lot of misunderstanding for the most part, getting blamed on the bad things done by a small minority group of people. I don't know. I probably shouldn't get into like the Civil War stuff, go back that far, but there's a lot of bullshit that we're being taught about a lot of things about history too, but I was just starting to rant about like, my life and experience and observations. I've done some research about history too and found a lot of things that they teach us in school and the movies and things portray and stuff are not exactly historically accurate either. It's another thing. We used to kind of all have our own countries for the most part. I mean, sure, there were places people felt had been invaded in the past, and yeah, it's happened all throughout history. but a people that had spent a lot of time together. When we're talking about America and Canada and places in Europe and so on, people that may have had animosity towards each other from old, things from way in the past, might not have got along perfectly all the time, but they had a lot of things in common and a lot of history together. And they knew each other well for a long time, been neighbors for a long time, and they got along a hell of a lot better than people are getting along now, when everybody's migrating all over the place and mixing around with people that hate them more. For the most part, the people that came to America became Americans and were Americans and behaved as Americans. Might not always agreed or got along, but they weren't completely at each other's throats. There wasn't this level of mass division and animosity to the point where there is now, except in like a few little spots where there had been. I mean, there's been something, certain areas where the division, the fomenting of division and bad blood and stuff had run deep in certain areas, but not everywhere. Not most areas, just pockets around the country, you know. Now, perhaps this is fiction, but I like to believe that there may have even been a time when they counted the votes and gave a damn. When the people in their area who lived in their areas kind of worked together as a community and made sure they actually had representation at a local level. Now that's all gone. The ones posing as representatives now turned a deaf ear to the people. They just take the money and run. And they tell the people to shut up. And they do whatever they want. A lot of places in this country and in the rest of the European countries and hell, a lot of places around the world even used to be a lot safer to live than they are now. So many countries around the world that look like bombed out craters used to be beautiful not that long ago. Booming cities and Now, I can't pretend too much that the government hasn't been wicked the whole time. But the level of wickedness we see now is off the cuff. It's beyond anything we've kind of beyond, for the most part, the things we've seen very often in the past. I mean, this stuff's been going on for a long time, for over 100 years, really. But it wasn't on such a quite as much of a grand. Well, I mean, it looked like it was kind of like World War II and World War One were pretty crazy. I'll give you that, and other things, but I was still, and that was, I think, a big. That what happened that back then was a big mistake. Didn't lead to anything better for hardly anyone, I don't think. But this led us to where we are now, and where it looks like we're heading. And how many people can really look around at the world the way it is today and say that it's getting better? Unless you're born without eyes to see and ears to hear, and a brain that functions to observe your surroundings. Do a little research and look at the, you know, seek the truth and you'll find it, and just believe the first pack of lies you're told. Things have gone crazy now, more than ever. There's been some crazy in the past, lots of it, but this is kind of a new level. We're dang near at like final boss level shit here, you know. It's incredible how crazy things got so quickly. I'm not sitting here trying to pretend like things were perfect in the past, like things weren't fucking screwed up, because they were screwed up. They were screwed up. But there's levels to this shit. And this is not looking better to anyone who's very observant or honest. That's pretty good. I don't know. It's just crazy. I guess I'll let that be the end of the rant. Alright then.